Now, most people would say that climbing the 7 summits is a mountain of a task, but after completing that, Geordie Stewart wanted to do more.
So in 2018, he decided to cycle around the world by himself, and in 430 days, Geordie covered 22,500 miles. He joins us now in the studio.
Well, welcome. You haven't come on your bike, though, today.
I haven't, no.
Slightly disappointed by that. We thought you were going to.
Temporary retirement, I think.
So why go on a bike and why go on your own?
Yeah, well, they're both interesting questions. I think why the bike, because I found it was a very amazing instrument to be able to ingratiate yourself to different societies, and because you're by yourself, people are very open to you, I think. If I was with a friend, I think they're less, or different people you come across, these small communities in rural areas, are less open to discussion if you're with someone else. But being alone, I felt vulnerable and I felt isolated in a way, but that made me very connected as well.
I was reading up a little bit about you. I saw some bits about you having to hide from the Chinese police and living on £10 a day. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the £10 a day was because I'd saved money before the trip and then tried to live a very frugal lifestyle to enable it to happen. And you can have a very luxurious trip for a short period of time, or you try and eke it out and you spend a lot of time living in your tent. The living under the bridges was... Yeah, I was in Xinjiang, which is in northwest China. It's a very contentious part of the world, and there's barbed wire on the side of the motorways, so you couldn't divert off and wild camp, which is what I would normally do. So you're restricted to sometimes living under a motorway, which is not the most glamorous. And it was Christmas last year, and I was, on New Year's Eve, I was under a bridge in northwest China. It was not the most glamorous.
We've covered stories from that part of the world a lot recently.
Yeah.
What's happening to the Uyghur population up there? What did you see?
Well, I think your actual visibility of the re-education camps is pretty limited. I found that my perception was based on my own, how I was viewed by the Chinese police and the services there and the government. I was immediately brought in for passport scans. I had my passport and phone removed. I had police checkpoints every 20 kilometres, so every hour or so on the bike. And your movement is severely restricted. So that aspect was really, really hard, because a big part of the trip for me was freedom, was trying to escape sort of the life that I was going down in the UK. And I think by yourself on a bike is the other end of the spectrum. And to go in a place like that where you're constantly under surveillance, I found pretty confronting experience.
22,500 miles is a long time to be left alone with your thoughts.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself?
It is a long time. Yeah, it's a long time on your own. I found it important to be by yourself, and I enjoyed the time alone. I listened to a lot of music and podcasts, and I think you learn a lot in terms of the physical and mental endeavours you're going through, but also the way it relates back to the United Kingdom. And I thought that was a really interesting stage of the journey, was when I realised I was in Australia and New Zealand, so as far as you can get from this country. And I still felt more connected in a way to my own country, and that's where I wanted to end up.
We're just showing our viewers some of the landscape that you were covering. I mean, you've got some stunning views there. Yeah,
there was a good variety. Yeah, I mean, I loved aspects of it. I mean, there was tough bits in winter in Siberia, and, it goes down to -40, and then I had +45 also in the USA. But I thought some of the best bits were deserts, when you have this, in terms of your mental state anyway, where you have this monotony of landscape, but that allows you to think a lot and reflect, which I thought was important.
Which way round did you go and why?
So I headed east, so I went towards Turkey from the UK and then across Kazakhstan and China, which was in itself an important turning point, because you either go across the old Silk Road, which is what most cyclists do, or you do what I did, which was a slightly rash decision to head up north towards Siberia, and then towards Southeast Asia and then Australia and New Zealand. And again, that was another decision point, whether I flew home, whether I went to Africa or South America, and I decided to go across the USA. It's something I wanted to do for 15 years or so. So then did that and then back into Europe.
Would you do it again, or have you thrashed yourself enough?
I wouldn't.
You're a glutton for punishment.
I'm not a glutton for punishment. I think with all these different trips or endeavours one does, you'd have to do them for their own separate reasons. So for this one, it was for a very specific reason. The 7 summits I did when I was, between the ages of 18 and 22. And then I was in the army for 5 years, and I think you do them all for different reasons. So I wouldn't do this trip again because I feel like I got what I was looking for. But there might be other stuff that intrigues me.
What do you think would be next?
That's a good question. I got asked that question before I even went on the trip, which I thought was quite unfair. It was presumptuous I was going to finish. I think that at the moment I'm happy being at home and seeing friends and family. I want to sit down and write another book on this trip, but I need time to reflect on it and work out the bits of the trip that are important. But certainly for me, writing is the best way I can express my sentiments towards the trip.
Well, great to meet you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've become a cycling enthusiast in
yeah,
recent
well,
weeks.
I cycle from one side of the country to the other. It pales into insignificance, doesn't it?